if it lets me. I think we might be live. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome all. Today, inshallah, this is the fifth week that we are covering Ramadan. We started before Ramadan. We are almost done. SubhanAllah, it just flies. We are already in the last 10 days officially as of last night. So I pray that Allah will help us make the best out of it and open up all these great meanings and wisdoms behind Ramadan and the fasting, and help us gain closeness to Him through our fasting and all these tafakkur and the reflections and the meanings that flow to our spirit through the fasting and the spiritual atmosphere we experience in Ramadan, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, we have been reading up to the 8th point. We are now at the 8th point. We have discussed, especially last week, more about the taming of our nafs, but also about the Quran, right? How Ramadan being the month of the Quran, and how our spirit through fasting gets ready to be more of a recipient for the Quran's message. So inshallah, this week we will continue from the 8th habit, and this, we will start considering some of the bodily, medical, but also, how our body is actually connected to our spirit, in a sense that fasting actually is not just a bodily act, and that it helps us spirit, and what we eat from that point of view impacts how we think, and all that, like the connection between those two. And then, inshallah, if we have time, we'll go through the other parts as well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. 8th point. Another of the wise purposes behind the Ramadan fast concerns man's personal life and is as follows. The Ramadan fast from food and drink is a healing, physical, and spiritual program of the most important kind. When one's lower soul, one's nafs, leads one to eat and drink as one pleases, it is not only harmful for us physically, from a medical point of view. For when we fall on things and devour them like vultures, without considering whether they are lawful or unlawful, we poison our spiritual life as well. Such a soul finds it very difficult to obey the heart or the spirit. Such a soul, such a nafs, finds it very difficult to obey the heart or the spirit, ruh. There's a footnote here which is distinguishing. Soul in this context is nafs, the lower soul, and spirit is ruh, which are again different faculties of the human being. It is more than happy to take the reins, the soul, the nafs, it's more than happy to take the reins in its own hands and gradually turns it into something utterly uncontrollable. Instead of being mounted and led by its owner, the lower self turns into a beast that mounts its owner and rides him or her wherever its fancy takes it. Fasting in Ramadan, however, and the fast from food and drink in particular, trains the lower self and makes it accustomed to a kind of diet. Gradually, the soul begins to discipline itself and learns to listen to and obey commands. Furthermore, through fasting, the lower self will no longer be making the wretched stomach ill by stuffing it full of food before the last meal has even been digested. And by withdrawing even from lawful acts, as it is ordered to do, the soul will learn how to listen to the commands of both the Sharia and human reason, and thus avoid that which is unlawful. In short, it will try not to destroy its owner's spiritual life. Furthermore, the vast majority of human beings often suffer from hunger. Human beings thus need both hunger and discipline in order to be able to learn patience and endurance. Fasting in Ramadan means the patient endurance of a period of hunger that is longer than 15 hours in most places. As such, it provides discipline and is a kind of prolonged training session. Fasting, if done properly, is certainly a cure for impatience and lack of endurance, both of which tend to prolong or increase man's affliction. Furthermore, the stomach is like a factory, with numerous workers, and many of the body's organs are connected to it. If the lower self does take a rest during this month, it makes the factory's workers and the organs attached to it forget their particular duties. It keeps them so busy that they remain imprisoned under its tyranny. They become so confused and distracted by the continuous hustle and bustle of the factory that all of the workers and all of the other organs cannot help but forget their real and most valuable duties. It is for this reason that for centuries, those close to God have disciplined themselves through fasting in order to train their souls and attain perfection. Through fasting in Ramadan, the factory's workers understand that they were not created solely for the sake of the factory. Similarly, the rest of the organs are freed from the base amusements of the factory and are able to delight in the more elevated pleasures of the spirit. It is for this reason that in Ramadan, the believers experience forms of enlightenment and spiritual joy which differ in accordance with their degrees. Consequently, the subtle faculties such as the heart, the intellect, and the spirit make great progress during Ramadan on account of the fasting and self-denial. The stomach may indeed weep, but the rest of the organs, limbs, and senses jump for joy. It's a relatively long section, and I would like to, inshallah, dissect it into a few different sections because every time it says furthermore, I think it's a new meaning. But let's start, inshallah, from the beginning, because how fasting in Ramadan is both from a medical point of view a diet, but of course, in our context, connection to spirit and how lower self, like training of the uh, lower self, um, is important, and like how fasting enables that. So with us we have Kulin Hocam and also Nazif Durmaz abi. So um, since you were already here last week, Kulin Hocam, maybe we'll start with you and give Nazif abi a break and then get his thoughts as well. Do you think?
I don't mind.
Okay,
Bismillah.
Jazakallah.
Um, Something that struck me when you were reading this is that it is actually about the inversion of values. Values, we stand values on our head generally, a modern man, a modern humankind. Um, from an Islamic perspective, we need to be informed by four things. Firstly, how we understand the creation, how we understand being. That's our ontology. And we understand, as believers, we understand being as the creation is created by an all loving, compassionate, merciful, and just creator. And that ontology, how we understand who we are, leads to an epistemology which is in line with this. And epistemology means where do we get our knowledge from? How do we know things? How do we know what we know? And from the Islamic perspective, of course, we know that there is revelation. So our epistemology, where we get our knowledge from and how we know, is informed by revelation. So that's two things: ontology, epistemology. The next is morality. In other words, how does what we know impact our morality? Our morality is supposed to grow out of revelation. And of course, revelation grows out of our understanding that there is a creator. And our morality is supposed to inform our behaviors. So, in other words, how we do what we do, and actually what we do, should be governed by our morality. This is the Fitri, these are the Fitri steps, right? Ontology to epistemology to morality to behaviors. In other words, from God to revelation to Sharia, all of the Sharias, Sharia Fitriya, Sharia Takwiniya, Sharia Sharia, Tashri'iyah. So, and morality, of course, then leads to behaviors. What we do should be informed. But modern man, modern humankind, has reversed that. And actually, it is now, we can see behaviors are actually now dictating morality. And morality, when it becomes corrupted, dictates our understanding of, where we get our knowledge from. Revelation doesn't make any sense for anyone who wants to follow their nafs solely. So we can see now in the world outside that behavior is driving morality and not the other way around. Morality is not driving behavior. Behavior is driving morality. And a good example is the fact that, as Hazrat Ustad points out, the tongue was created for the sake of the stomach, not the other way around. The stomach wasn't there to be filled with rich and greasy and fat and salty and sweet foods in order to please the tongue, in order to please the sense of taste. And this is really interesting because he actually says it. If you can go down a little bit, um, I think it's on the next
One
slide.
sec. Yeah, let me switch. It's clear.
Should full screen so I can
Oh,
see it.
oops. Yeah, sorry.
There it is. Instead of being mounted and led by its owner,
Yeah,
the lower self turns into a beast that mounts its owner and rides him or her wherever its fancy takes it. This was the sentence that shouted out to me.
mm-hmm.
Ramadan is about realizing that values have become changed round completely. They've become inverted.
Yeah,
So instead of the lower self being dictated to by the strictures of morality, the lower self is dictating what its morality should be. So if I want to go out and do what I want, that's how that will inform my morality. In other words, lack of morality or immorality or amorality or however you want to articulate it. So Ramadan comes to um, through fasting show us what is the right way round, right? That it's ontology that should inform epistemology, and that should inform our morality, and our morality should inform our behaviors, not the other way around. And I think Hazrat Ustad here is actually alluding to this because he says, we can just fall on something greedily and eat whatever's there, as though we have no rules, no regulations, nothing. The self wants to do this, and therefore the self creates its own morality, which is a kind of anti-morality or an amorality, amorality or immorality, however you want to phrase it. This is what struck me.
yeah, Jazakallah khair. This is indeed very true, right? I mean, as we see in the Western cultures here, right? Like even the spirituality or these needs that are, or meditation, whatever, those are all need for the sake of the soul, for the sake of living better, feeling better. I mean, for 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 our nafs, for our lower self, it doesn't want to feel bad with all the decisions that it made as well. So all these other spirituality comes for the sake of the soul, not necessarily the other way around, as you suggested. So indeed, a very Interesting analysis. Jazakallah khair. Thank you for that.
And unfortunately, it's not just Western society now, it's everywhere. The
Yeah,
West is everywhere now.
exactly. Yeah, the whole world is like a village now. So it is indeed the case. Um, Nazif abi, any thoughts, especially what Kun Hocam has brought about the nafs mounting us rather than being in charge of the nafs itself, um, and that question.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I can add a couple of things. And thanks a lot again. Yeah, just Hocam, just he mentioned that very important kind of part of morality and the distinguishing between and how overall that reminded me about just taking all these like bounties and whatever we have around us for granted. And I think it's just it's like you mentioned so about that just reminding part. So Ramadan is it's a great kind of month that just reminding us what's happening and what is more and what is not much more important for us, because it's so easy to take things for granted and get lost in all these bounties that is just coming at us and to us and continuously, sometimes even not just thinking about tomorrow or not thinking about like it's meant how they are created or how they are useful or not for us. Just human beings being consuming just senselessly, right? And then, of course, I mean, as if like we are created only for food and drink, right? As just like it mentions, and in some, of course, sometimes you just like forget about like I mean, just and you get lost in all these like it's been nice and beautiful kind of stuff that Allah Almighty created. And of course, I mean, just some other kind of stuff. So just it's not easy to think clearly, and but once, of course, I mean, just you're not giving your nafs and what it wants, and so of course, I mean, just now immediately, so your nafs becomes so it's almost kind of like a warning, right? Into in a sense, just like hey, just listen, like I mean, just so and you are different. So just maybe it's somehow like I mean, just telling that so you have a different duty, so that just that duty is not only just drinking and eating, and of course, I mean just that spirit that your spirit should be kind of just fed. So, but of course, I mean just not in some ways, maybe it seems like it's been a little not easy to train because I guess, I mean, of course, I'm just first of all, so and if of course a human being is just having some sort of kind of difficulty even understanding or just about their his or her, of course, I mean, just duties of like, and just who am I and why am I created from? But of course, I mean, just once it is established, so then that means like, I mean, so what should I do more? To show, of course, I mean, just that I should be obeying. So then, of course, I mean, just now that the next sentence it says, so then that means like our spirit uh, and spiritual being, let's say, should be trained and should be taught, and it ought to listen and obey and commend. And so it's basically it's not only just right. So like in our self is our only duty is not limited to some certain kind of actions. So I guess like it's been in short. So again and again. So start like in different kind of places. It all just like, just tells me that it's always kind of reminder. So just don't forget. So and also just I mean as a human being. So it's almost kind of Allah Almighty has given us many opportunities. If one is wondering about so what else I should be doing, right? So how else I should be remembering my creator. So, and these are like, and it's been great tools and great activities in of like in just thinking about him, contemplating him, right? So like, and I just here I am. So all Allah. So like, and hear this. So like, it's been you want me to just obey in terms of like it's been maybe cutting myself like it's just from some daily or like some different activities in a day. So like even like from drinking and eating and doing different kind of stuff. So like here I am also just performing that. So, and even like Ramadan gives us like this extra kind of activities, like while you're just fasting, you're reading Quran, and you're praying, and you're just being with friends. So these are the great just opportunities. And yeah, as Mustafa is like just now underlying, so like this, so teaching the soul, right? So and
Mm-hmm.
so avoiding and just like of commit, like following the commands of Sharia and human reason, of course. So that is also important.
Yeah, like how should we understand, maybe Nazwa, since you have the microphone, I'll ask you, how should we understand like this connection between like withdrawing from lawful acts, the soul learns how to listen to the Sharia. So is it some sort of like a um, prerequisite for us, like to, if we learn how to control ourselves for the lawful acts, it will help us avoid unlawful. Is that how we should understand that
I
part?
don't know. Yeah, that's what I believe. So just basically just if one spends like more time on following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's like his Sharia, his or the things that he wants us to follow. So just one by one. So if one follows him, so inshallah, so like all the other things, like I mean the reminders, and so like even great friends and nice friends, and everything will become some sort of kind of server for that action, for that person, let's say. Just so, and he will find like it's been one day, like it's been just, and his surroundings are somehow will be built upon, like I mean just in similar kind of just way. So, and that's what I think, because if you have that urge, right? So like I mean some sort of kind of craving, that finding your creator, and trying to follow his law and his Sharia, and so or like let's just put it this way, so just now Allah Almighty wanted to be seen and known, and here you are. So like when this is a given opportunity, so an action. So if I need to just follow, so like that means even from by even like even if it is like an instrument, a lawful act, right? Like it's been that you
Mm-hmm.
just mentioned now. So even if it's like it's been drinking or eating, so just by it's a simple kind of, it's lawful. But then at that moment, so if you have the order, if you have the command, hey, do not touch until some certain kind of hour, like from sunrise to sunset. So then that means like, okay, so I'm even gonna do it, right? So even if it's like it's been lawful at this moment for me, but then I know that, so there are some certain kind of guidelines given to me, and of course when there is some sunnah that that your prophet, like it's been, he also did it, and so many others, and so and yada yada. So like you see, like now you're having some sort of kind of a nice kind of action with group of friends, with tons of friends actually. So now just you're doing it, and you're sharing even uh uh that like a morality, like just Kolnaj, I'm not gonna mention it. So you have built like in some sort of kind of culture, and then you're following that, and you're being part of it, right? So that also gives your soul, I believe, that some sort of kind of elevation, inshallah.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I'll ask a similar question to Koen Hocam as well. Thank you, and that's very really great points. Um, like withdrawing from lawful acts, like fasting is such that, like, is it how we should understand like why some of these ascetics and that withdrawn from public life, etc., are trying to train? This is like what, like, it's in a small sphere, is fasting is teaching us, like, withdraw from lawful acts to train our souls, and then to learn for that, to learn, um, to train that ability to withdraw from the unlawful too. Is that like a common way? Is that how we should always be?
I think there's a bit of a misleading, uh, how can I say, sentiment that we have about lawful acts. Acts are lawful if Allah says they're lawful, right?
Mm.
Now, again, I don't want people to misunderstand and think that things are good just because Allah says that they're good. That's a different argument. But lawfulness, sorry, just one second. Sorry, I've got something in my throat, so I mean, I'm not eating. It's just,
It's okay.
it's because I haven't eaten.
Exactly.
I
You
can't
cannot
swallow.
drink water
It's I
to
can't
get
drink.
that done.
Yeah, it's drink. It's actually drink that's more important for me than eating, to be honest. Having said that, right? What does it mean lawful? We get this idea that since something is mubah, that means we have full reign over it. We can do as we wish, right? But it's
Mm.
very clear, and it's actually very relevant now that there is a verse which says "Wakulu washrabu wala tusrifu," right? Eat and drink, but do not waste. So eat and drink there can be understood in any context, not just food and drink, because basically this is talking about ibaha, right? It's talking about those acts which are not haram, which they are halal, and there are millions and millions of them. Like washing your car is mubah. You know, you can wash your car. It's not forbidden for you to wash your car. You can go out into the garden and you can look at the trees. This is mubah. However, it says la tusrifu. In other words, even the mubah acts are governed by a Sharia rule, which is do not go to excess, do not waste. So, um, it's always really amazed me that you can go to the refrigerator and I'm not sure now because we've just changed our clock when iftar is, I think, like 7:42. So at 7:41, everything in the fridge is haram for you. All right. Normally
Mm.
these things are mubah, you know. You want some food, you open the fridge, you take it without even thinking. But at 7:41, they're haram for you. And if you eat them at 7:41, the penalty is 2 months suc of successive days of fasting,
Mm.
which is a
Mm.
huge penalty for a 1 minute transgression, right? A transgression 1 minute before iftar causes 2 months of fasting because fasting is so good for us, so blessed that we don't realize actually how blessed it is. Because what it's making us understand is that there is only one lawgiver. Even with mubah things, they are governed and ruled by certain, how can you say, Allah circumscribes them with certain conditions. So, yes, you can go and wash your car, but you wash it properly. You don't wash it with milk, right? You do it properly. You do it in a just fashion, right?
Mm.
You don't do it, at 3 o'clock in the morning when neighbors are sleeping and you're taking hoses out and you've got the radio on, and you don't do that. Doing all of that is mubah, but not at 3 in the morning when you are annoying other people. So normally, when we say lawful acts, um, a man and wife who are married sleeping together is lawful, but the very same act is unlawful if you're not married. So it is what he commands. And the lawful is not some kind of, people say, oh, there are the religious things such as prayer and fasting and Hajj and Zakat and Shahada, the religious acts of worship. Then there is the worldly life, as though everything else is fair game, everything else is mubah. And somehow it's not governed by any kind of Sharia norms. And I think I mentioned last week, or maybe in another circle, I can't remember, because all circles seem to mix into one. There's a book has been published in America called The Islamic Secular, in which there is an argument being made for us as Muslims also to be able to say that we believe in the secular. And this is ridiculous. The author is saying that the area of Mubah, since it's not governed by Sharia rules, is in a sense the Islamic secular, which is one of the craziest things I've heard. in the last few years. Clearly, the Mubah is governed by this exact rule here, Kullu washrabu wa la tusrifu. That's enough to cover the whole of the Mubah. And of course, our jurists over 1400 years show very clearly in their books that what is Mubah, what is lawful, is governed actually by Sharia norms, by moral and by ethical precepts. So we have to be careful, giving up the lawful. Yes, it will help us to give up the unlawful, but we also have to bear in mind that the lawful can also trip us up, right? We
Yeah,
shouldn't be thinking that just because it's lawful, you can do it when you want, how you want, and whenever you want.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
just my take on that.
Indeed, Jazakallah khair. Yeah, I mean that definition of lawful, right? And that it becomes lawful when Allah asks us to do so. And those boundaries, right, as you mentioned, and when you said like 1 minute, 1 minute before the fasting ends, even if you broke it at that point, you still have to fast 2 months. It's not like prorated if it is like a few minutes early or a few hours
Yeah,
early.
you don't get any taken off your your fine just because it was 1 minute. It makes no difference, even if it was 1 second before.
Yeah. This is a very clear sign, I think, right? That um, the boundaries that Allah has set are the boundaries that we have to obey. It's not like negotiable or it is the purpose is not just to stay hungry for a period of time. It is to understand that it is only lawful when Allah makes it lawful to you. And 1 minute or few hours doesn't really make a difference in that
I
case.
think you're absolutely right. Actually, I don't think Ramadan really is about hunger or thirst, to be honest. Because do we really ever get hungry? Really? Generally speaking, we don't. And even in Ramadan, we should be eating at least a third less. Thirst may be a different issue, but I mean, we never get to the point where we're dying of hunger or dying of thirst. So it's not really, I mean, it's about tasting hunger,
Hmm.
which sounds paradoxical. But just tasting that hunger makes us realize, we're needy, we're ajis, we're faqir.
Hmm.
We can't live without this fuel that we're putting inside our bodies. It's impossible. So we can't be self-sustaining and self-directing. And I think these are all the lessons that we're being taught with Ramadan.
It's actually a good connection to the next part of this, right? Because I think it might be about breaking the habits, right? We have the habit of eating lunch, for example, and we realize in Ramadan when we skip lunch, we don't really die of hunger as we think. I mean, outside Ramadan, if we skip lunch, we would probably be around like, oh, I'm starving type of a person. But in Ramadan, we seem to know that, well, it's not really a big deal. And I think this next part here is like people either from due to sickness or something, they have to go through hunger, and there is that actually bodily help that it probably provides us. Right? I don't know, Nazif Abi, maybe I'll turn to you here. I mean, how should we understand like this breaking of habit of eating for human beings and how Ramadan could and fasting in Ramadan could help us change that paradigm, that mindset that we have to eat constantly. Um, any thoughts on that part, like this
Yeah.
endurance part?
Yeah, sure. Like, exactly, just as you guys mentioned about, so just breaking that habit and inshallah, and just being like just following that sort of just break, as I mentioned, like that taken for granted, like in everything. So even just a friend of mine just mentioned that how just and reminded actually just during COVID, so like how a lot of people just lost their like in a sense of smell, sense of
Mm,
taste And so you see, like, and I just know just for a second, and if you're losing that sort of kind of stuff, and imagine like, and just living that sort of kind living in that sort of kind of condition for almost the rest of your life. And then someone else also kind of mentioned that they're actually he witnessed some couple of people who already lost their taste of sense of taste and how they have to live just like that, maybe just the late years of their time. And just think about it. So we can give like thousands of examples for such of the bounties that we have, right? Everything that just Allah Almighty
Mm,
just given us, right? All these like just great tools and opportunities, like this, everything that we have. But during Ramadan, so just you break that. So just now and then you think about also like at some point, so you're somehow experiencing a little kind of hunger, as you guys like to mention. Of course, it's not a hunger, so like nobody's getting affected, unless of course just you're doing something wrong. But overall it's just again it's discipline. So we're actually just now
mm,
focusing only on the maybe just hunger kind of part, because that is the huge kind of part of maybe Ramadan. It's just you're cutting yourself like and it's when you're eating and drinking, but also some other activities like we talked about some other lawful acts, and maybe just even following not only that, but if we can also just follow that the examples that we talked about, that lawful acts, maybe whatever that we are doing, like it's been during daytime. So like and just maybe this is a good opportunity for us also cut that sort of maybe unnecessary activities. Maybe if it
mm,
is that if someone is somehow, I mean, let's say just experiencing a lot of like it's been maybe cannot take himself maybe gossiping or doing this, or maybe some sort of kind of different kind of stuff. Maybe it is a great opportunity, or maybe just like spending a lot of time, right, on social media or this and that, like, or maybe just doing, again, maybe, I don't know, again, like, maybe just like how lawful acts. I don't want to give some particular examples, but here it is, like, and it's maybe it's a good opportunity also just, maybe refrain yourself at home
yeah,
and busying yourself with maybe just reading and maybe just reading Quran especially. Of course, that would be also kind of nice opportunity and to exercise that sort of kind of behavior. And the reason I'm kind of like I'm just mentioning is like so it just reminded me that some maybe unlawful acts they come uh, according to my experience and just like just now looking around, especially some of my relatives and friends and everything. So just instead of like some of them maybe just becoming much more religious, but instead, so they go a little kind of the other way. The reason is because
mm,
I guess like the kufr that we just say, right? So like this mean that disbelief or unbelief, just the believers, they are not taking time off, right? So this human mind is like just so busy, is like it's making themselves like it's been a lot busier, like just during some certain kind of time, and especially like Ramadan, so like asking some different questions. And I see like in some of my friends like finding themselves like as if like they are the ones like who are defending Islam and just like try to answer like in every single question. Like this, hey, just take it easy. So you're not the only one, so you don't have to make yourself just busy and just answer every single question. And plus, I mean, what is it good for? So like on social media or this and that. So like some of my students they ask me questions, but then you see like it's been no, it's not your job. So just take some time off, right? So just go back to the
mm,
basics and make yourself like it's been. And I guess like Ramadan is a great opportunity. So just here I am. So like let me discipline myself, go back to the factory settings. So
yeah,
through fasting, maybe I can train my soul and attain like just it says like it's been perfection. So that's a great kind of goal, I believe. So and not just because just as we just talked, right? So like I mean so here we are. So like, and then because the truth, it gets like so complicated at some sort of kind of point, especially outside. But then again, like it's not my job to get just involved with them. And actually, it is our job, like and maybe just to go back to just the basics and just to through, of course, when Ramadan, through like fasting. And so like that the factory that is a great example. So like in a spirit, you have a spiritual side. So not only all these like kind of just the organs that we have. So like our brain is also an organ. So like now just I have to now just tell it that hey, just you're also helping my spiritual kind of being. So like let me just give some time off to you. And yeah, I don't know. These are the things that just came to
Yeah,
me
indeed.
recently.
Jazakallah khair. Indeed, I mean, the factory settings, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that definitely is a great
Mhm.
analogy because
Mhm.
this, like, there is a factory, and
Mhm.
stomach being a very central factory can
Mhm.
also distract other parts of the factory. So resetting
Yeah.
that, right, in your words,
Yeah. Yeah.
helps us, I think,
Mhm.
focus through those distractions from
Mhm.
social media to
Mhm.
whatsoever. I think it definitely cuts
Yeah.
out all the chatter. I think there was this word hustle and bustle
Mhm. Yeah.
mentioned here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
finding the real, I mean, a bit more clarity for soul
Mhm.
to focus on what is really needed,
Mhm.
starting with someone's own spiritual life, I would say, and
Mhm.
then continue from there. Yeah. Colin Hocam, any reflections about this factory, stomach factory, and how it can distract us from our real job?
Yeah, breaking habits is really important.
Mm,
If you consider hijrah is the biggest breaking of habit that
mm,
there is, right? To make hijrah is very important. We all need to make a hijrah, right? Physically, it's also good to make a hijrah if you can. But if you can't do it physically, make a hijrah from habit, from prejudice, from the day-to-day grind, the ceaseless white noise of social media or television or radio, or all of these things. We become trapped in these bubbles, in these vicious circles. And the principle of hijrah is get away from that. Otherwise, how are you going to
mm,
know anything, actually? And I mean, my own experience is the first day of Ramadan is always like I feel I've been hit by a truck, uh, you know, and how am I going to do this? My whole schedule is turned upside down, and my sleep pattern goes out of the window, all of these things. But by day 2 and 3, I'm thinking, how can people not do this? How can people not fast? And I remember during COVID, uh, one of our neighbors, very nice neighbor, she said, "Oh, you poor thing. Not only is there COVID and you can't go out, but you're also fasting. Oh, you poor thing." And I'm thinking to myself, she's very compassionate, but I'm thinking, no, you're the one who needs to be doing this. Everyone needs to be doing it. Because how do you get out of the vicious circle of this, like, sort of stupefying sybaritic sameness that we have, that every day we're doing the same thing, every day we're negligent, every day we're in this vicious circle. We're going to work to earn lots of money to buy a big house that we can't be there in the house because we're at work saving money for it, and all of these ridiculous cycles that we get ourselves into. Somehow they have to be broken, and Ramadan is like a hammer, or
mm,
a truck, it drives into you and just upends everything. And that we need this. Look at the hijrah
yeah.
of our blessed Prophet, sallallahu. The hijrah was the start of a new civilization. Actually, if you look through history, migration, all of the great civilizations began with a migration. Now, that must be telling us something. A civilization is the biggest breaking of habit that there is. And so Ramadan is there to wake us up. What are you doing? The whole year you're just doing what you want. You're eating what you want, drinking what you want, saying what you want, getting up when you want. You can't do that anymore for this month. And that
Yeah.
makes us question. It makes us question what we do, and that's not a bad thing ever.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. And I mean, you're right in the sense that, like, breaking the habit, and everyone, I think, wants to break their bad habits, right? I mean, even your neighbor, I suppose, who who pitied you for your fasting, probably would want to eat less or be more healthy. But yeah, and those are usually wishes. But Ramadan is definitely a practical school, I think, for all of us every year to actually give us that opportunity to break our habits and be better human beings at the end of the day. It's like a boot camp to break habits and get new good habits. So it's our like last 10 minutes or so. And Alhamdulillah, we have covered good ground on the 8th point. And actually, 9th point is our last one. And it is a relatively short one, talking about the hadith. I'll read through it. And after that, we can, it actually sums up the Risala on Ramadan. This is the last one. So, after that, I'll get either thoughts about this part or in general, inshallah, about Ramadan and fasting and thoughts about the last 10 days as well. Shall I read this? The 9th point. One of the wise purposes behind the fast of Ramadan pertains to the shattering of the lower self's imaginary ownership and sense of lordship, rububiyyah, and to exposure of its impotence, which is necessary if it is to realize that its duty is one of worship. The lower self, nafs, does not want to recognize the one who sustains it. Instead, it wishes to express its own lordship, just as Pharaoh did. Its character remains the same, regardless of how much torment it puts itself through in its quest for self-worship. There is one thing, however, which is able to bring it to its knees, and that is hunger. Therefore, the Ramadan practice of self-denial in general and the fast in particular strikes direct blows at the heart of the lower self's pharaoh-like facade, shattering it completely. The fast exposes the self's impotence, its weakness, and its need. In short, it makes it realize that it is a slave. Among the prophetic traditions is the following. God Almighty said to the lower self, "What am I and what are you?" The lower self replied, "I am myself and you are yourself." So God punished it and cast it into hell. Then he asked it again, "What am I and what are you?" And again it replied, "Ana anta anta." I am myself and you are yourself. However much God punished it, still it would not relinquish its egoism. Finally, God punished it with hunger. Then, when he asked it, "What am I and what are you?" the self replied, the nafs replied, "You are my compassionate sustainer, and I am your impotent slave." So inshallah, before we of course go into the prayer here, I would like to have thoughts, maybe Nazifabi from you first, and then end with Kulnajam. And also in general as well, if you have thoughts about Ramadan and last 10 days, and of course this part as well about nafs and its training.
Um, yeah, actually, this is a great kind of part. And so the ninth, it just to me, thinking about just like how to get rid of that, just how to break that like habit. I guess like this is what it is, and just this shows the big picture. So this is what we are like, we've been working on for over a year. So like it's been 11 months. You're doing exactly whatever you like, and then all of a sudden like Ramadan comes in, and then just it's so here it is. So Allah Almighty tells you, and I have like several friends and just like good friends, and some of them they find themselves they cannot like break some of their habits, and maybe just like I'm like maybe just one of them in terms of coffee. So like I have to have coffee like just. But then, so like this been with Ramadan. So if anyone tells me, "Hey, don't drink," or this or that, like I wouldn't even just give in any air like this. I wouldn't even listen to them. Like I'm just doing. But then, as soon as Ramadan comes in, so even if I have that smell of like coffee at work or this and like in some different kind of places, I know that just Allah Almighty told me. So like there is no way, even if the smell is beautiful or this and that. So you want, yes, overall maybe first week. So you have this type of kind of things that are gonna happen. But later on, so you know like what the big picture is. So here you are, so you're a slave, and so you can only just like do some certain kind of stuff Allah Almighty just allows you. But of course, if you go like let me just like to the top of like that 9 points, so and just it is the main picture like is our just the role is the purpose is right. So just the shattering, so like the imaginary ownership, so that so here it is like this, you're not the one, so commending, right? So and and again, so I guess like just to in order to uh, make some sort of kind of growth, right? So like to achieve that growth, like in just in terms of like some spiritual as like a human being, I guess like one needs to shatter those like just the chains, right? So like I mean, okay, so I'm not like holding the reins. So Allah Almighty, so and He's the one because He's the so the Wahidiyya like in this means so like I have to see like in this mean everything is just coming from Him. So it's just like now I am impotent, right? So it's I mean so Allah Almighty. So even like when we utter the words like in this mean Bismillahir Rahman, so like in here so like now you learn about that Rahman and Rahim. So and where you are in this. Right, so like I mean, so that like see this like I mean, the chain of like command around us, and who is the one like I mean, whoever is the one actually just like giving me the tongue and stomach, so should be the one. So who is giving me the all these beautiful vegetables and fruits and everything. So whoever is the one like who is creating all these beautiful and a put like it's been some sort of kind of nice um, shape or like let me just like a smell and everything, right? So like it's been the beautiful like it's been the oranges and so like who's should be the one like who's maybe cooking them right under this sun and on the sunlight. And then of course I'm just try to find it, right? So all these like let's in the sun, like and then the moon and their relationship and all these like beautiful like it's been that just the other scientific kind of things that human beings like discovered the tide and everything. So like so then oh yeah, just here it is. So we're discovering again and again Allah Almighty's beauty and His he's the one who is the owner, right? Like who is the one
Yeah.
just making all these balances in the universe. So again and again, so like just now, but then like this means so then we should recognize the one who sustains all these, right? So like even the balance of the oxygen or the carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, or that. So all this stuff like it's been around us, right? So like just see it, not just like, of course, I mean, just like the Pharaoh or someone else. So don't go into the that sort of kind of direction. So like we just say in Surah Al-Fatiha, so just yeah, I have to go the right way, right? The true way, the true path. So and inshallah again and again. So here it is. So it's great kind of opportunity of like see your impotence and weakness, right?
Yeah.
And, yeah, and then and
Mm.
acknowledge that you're just a slave.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah.
Indeed, yeah,
Mhm.
this is really good connection right back to Fatiha as well. That, the straight path is
Mhm.
about understanding and realizing
Mhm.
that we are just slaves and we are not sustaining ourselves. And
Mhm.
Pharaoh and our nafs is
Mhm.
like a little Pharaoh tries to
Mhm.
think that it sustains itself, but that's not
Mhm.
the case.
Yeah.
Colin Hocam, any again thoughts about this connections to the previous point and again
Yeah,
general thoughts?
just a very, very quick thought is that there is this Arabic saying. I don't
Mm,
know, maybe it's even from a tradition. لكل فرعون Musa. For every
mm,
pharaoh, there is a Musa,
mm,
alayhi salam. So Ramadan is like the Moses who comes to free the slaves from the tyranny of Pharaoh.
mm.
So Ramadan is there to free us from the tyranny of our own Pharaoh, which is our lower self. That's all.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, great, great.
Yeah. Indeed. All right. So, inshallah, I will read this prayer, the Arabic and also in English, and inshallah, it will be we are in the last 10 days of Ramadan. Inshallah, now we might be now ready, inshallah, to spend the rest of the Ramadan with renewed fervor and enthusiasm. Inshallah, may Allah help us. Um, go through the rest of the Ramadan and make this Ramadan better than 1,000 months for all of us, inshallah. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد صلاة تكون لك رضاء ولحقه أداء بعدد ثواب قراءة حروف القرآن في شهر رمضان وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. O God, grant blessings and peace to our Master Muhammad that will be pleasing to you and fulfillment of his truth to the number of the merits of the words of the Quran in the month of Ramadan and to his family and companions and grant them peace. Limitless in his glory is your sustainer, the Lord of Almightiness, exalted above anything that man may devise by way of definition, and peace be upon all his message bearers, and all praise is due to Allah alone, the sustainer of all the worlds. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين